And today, Eagle Broadcasting Corporation was able to talk to His Excellency Ambassador Rodrigo Do Amaral Souza, the Brazilian ambassador to the Philippines, where he talks about reinforcing partnerships with the Philippines, the Iglesia ni Cristo, and Eagle Broadcasting Corporation amid the pandemic period. Let's listen in.
So, a question that might be of interest for the viewers.
All right, Mr. Ambassador, how have you been during this pandemic? We would like to ask first. How have you been?
Well, you know that these times are very hard for everyone, not only in the Philippines, but all over the world, even in Brazil, where the pandemic has hit us very hard. But I've been trying to be very cautious. I've been working from home for many months, practically since the first lockdown measures were imposed in Manila. And I think we managed to establish an efficient working methodology in the embassy. So we have also always staff there, and we are open to the public. The consular section of the embassy is open, has been open for many months. And I just hope that this situation might be solved soon, and that we could restore our normal lives as soon as possible.
How is work now in the embassy? Is it like any other places, like all over the world, not yet 100%?
Yes, well, we don't have a very large staff in Manila. So we introduce a rotation system between the different sectors of the embassy, so as to have at all time one staff member for each sector in the embassy. And all the others are available to work from their homes via teleoffice.
Yes.
Let us call it this. and I haven't received any complaints. I think that we have been able to answer all the inquiries and requests we have been receiving.
You're leaving us. Sad. Because you're leaving us. Can you tell us when is this going to happen and where are you going, sir?
Well, unfortunately, that's true. The life of a diplomat is characterized by constant moves from one country to another. That's part of our job. And I arrived here in January 2016. So in a few months, I would be completing 5 years of assignment in Manila. So that's the normal, the average time for a rotation. So I should be leaving in a few months. I'm bound for Trinidad and Tobago in the Caribbean. I will be the Brazilian ambassador in Port of Spain, the Trinidadian capital. And I will leave Manila with many good memories of all those years I spent here.
Oh, thank you very much. And sorry, of course you're leaving us, but you had activities, projects in the Philippines that you had here. Can you tell us some of these activities?
Yes, of course. We have been doing many things remotely, and we have been attending webinars, video conferences regarding many issues. And during the first months of the pandemic, we had a very urgent task. We were engaged in a large endeavor of repatriation. There were many Brazilian stranded tourists in many islands of the Philippine archipelago. So we had to group all these tourists, send them to Manila, and from Manila try to book them flights, commercial flights or freight flights to Brazil. And this was our priority mission during the first 3 months of the pandemic. Fortunately, we were able to repatriate most of those Brazilians. There are still some Brazilians who were left here, but in all these cases, they had some kind of help. They were able to find appropriate lodging, or they even chose, in some cases, to stay here for personal reasons. And in the last few weeks, we were also engaged in another important mission. The Philippine Air Force bought 6 new aircraft from a private Brazilian company, Embraer. And there was a very complex operation to bring these 6 airplanes from Brazil to the Philippines. This involved stops in intermediate countries, and in all those cases we had to request permissions for overflight and for landing. And also there were issues involving quarantine requirements for the crews. And we had to negotiate a waiver for these requirements so as to allow the operation to go ahead. And fortunately, the first 4 aircraft have already arrived in Clark, in Pampanga, and we are waiting for the 2 remaining airplanes to arrive this weekend. And so fortunately, the mission will be accomplished.
And usually nationwide, nationally observe activities like sports, culture. How has the pandemic affected your usual activities?
Well, this pandemic has hit all these activities very hard. We had to suspend, for instance, the usual National Day celebration, the reception that we hold every year at a hotel in Manila. These kinds of events are not permitted under the present circumstances. And also cultural performances, cultural events must await for the resumption of, must await the lifting of the quarantine restrictions. We have counted on the understanding of all our partners in cultural events, and they are all only waiting for the normal situation to be reestablished so that we could resume all those activities. We have to be very cautious and be on the safe side. We cannot risk the health of everything involved in these kinds of activities. So, well, let's just count on the understanding and on the patience of everyone involved.
Well, I just read up today because, as you know, I'm always in the news. So I just read up that the UN Chief Antonio Gutierrez recently emphasized the universal access for a vaccine, for everyone to have equitable access for all. And Brazil has just signed on as one of the countries to join COVAX facility. That is so good. Excellent, sir.
Yes, we fully agree that vaccines will be essential for this crisis to be overcome. And we are trying to establish deals with many pharmaceutical companies and vaccine producers so that everyone that will need a vaccine will be able to be attended in Brazil. We are trying to close cooperation deals with Russian, Chinese, British, American pharmaceutical companies, and we have also joined the WHO initiative to assure the distribution of vaccines to all strata of the population, even the poorer segments of the population. And we are sure that by the end of the year, we will start the distribution of vaccines in Brazil. This will be a long-lasting process that will go on for many months. But we are confident that it will start by the end of the year. And with the vaccines, we will have reached a very fundamental step towards the end of the pandemic worldwide. That's our aim, that's our wish, that's what the whole world is hoping for.
Mr. Ambassador, could you expound more on your mission here in the Philippines? How has it been? Do you see potential for stronger trade, tourism, diplomatic ties with the Philippines? Has it been affected with this current situation?
There is still a huge potential to be explored, to intensify and to increase bilateral trade, for instance. I think that we must insist on expanding the knowledge about our mutual realities, not even here in the Philippines, but also in Brazil. Many people in Brazil still have a very vague impression of what the Philippines is as a country. And the same thing happens with Brazil in the Philippines. So one of the priorities of my mission was to go to many schools, universities, giving lectures, sending information, receiving students at the embassy to provide more information about Brazil. I think that's one of the key parts of my mission here. And I'm sure my successor agrees with that. My successor here will be a person who has a very deep knowledge of Southeast Asia. He is the current ambassador to Myanmar. He had always been ambassador to East Timor. And he knows the Philippines very well. He visited Manila many times during his tenure in Myanmar. And I think that also we must insist on removing barriers to trade, for instance. During my stay here, the most serious problem we faced regards sanitary barriers to our meat. To chicken, to beef, and also to pork. Today, for instance, we are facing restrictions to the entry of Brazilian poultry meat into the Philippine market, allegedly for the discovery of COVID-19 traces in a shipment bound for China, not for the Philippines. And the only country that imposed the restrictions to the Brazilian meat was the Philippines, unfortunately. We are working with the Department of Agriculture and other instances in the Philippine government to try to find a solution to this. But we have, all in all, a very good relation. We don't have any important disagreements in our bilateral relations. On the contrary, Brazil has a very long-standing history of good relations with the Philippines. We have more than 70 years of diplomatic relations with this country. We were present here in 1946 when the Philippines officially were declared as an independent country. And since then, we have official diplomatic relations. In 1970, we opened our resident embassy in Manila. And in Southeast Asia, the Philippines have always been viewed with priority attention by our government.
But on a positive note, in the world, Brazil is the largest exporter of coffee, sugar, soybeans, and other crops. And it's also good to note, I just read up on this, that Brazil's coffee production has actually increased over the last year. So how has recent times affected trade and production and export in this field? And would you attribute these advances in Brazil's agricultural technology?
Well, we are a world power regarding the exports of agricultural commodities. You mentioned coffee, soybeans, sugar, and well, we have to mention also meat and orange juice.
True.
We are leading producers of all these commodities, and producers and exporters.
Yes.
We have started to export some of these commodities to the Philippines. Meat, all in all, in the last 2 years, has increased its share in our export basket to the Philippines. And we hope to increase the export of our agriculture sector. But also one of our priorities, if you allow me, Alma, one of our priorities in trade is to increase the percentage of high-valued products. And I think that the export of airplanes to the Philippine Air Force is a significant step in this direction. And we have been viewing in the last decades iron ore and soybeans as the two leading products in our export basket. Well, these are good. We have been consolidating this trade flow during the years, but we want to diversify our export basket. And we are confident that on the Philippine side as well, we want to see the flow of trade and investments to grow. We had an important Philippine investment in the area of port management in Brazil, in the state of Pernambuco, in the northeast of Brazil. And we hope that the export flow from the Philippines will continue increasing in the next few years.
I'd like to ask, since what will you miss here in the Philippines when you go? On a personal note.
Well, I will miss the beautiful beaches of Boracay. I went 3 times to Boracay, and also one unforgettable trip to El Nido in Palawan. And these places, I will have them always in my memories and in my heart. And of course, Manila, this mega city, this metropolis, where I stayed and I lived for the last 5 years. It's a bustling and vibrant city, and I enjoyed very much my stay here.
And sir, do you have any last message for all our viewers who are watching you right now?
I just want to say hello to all your viewers. I know that Iglesia Ni Cristo has been trying to consolidate its presence in Brazil recently, and I just want to send a message to all your viewers, reaffirming and reassuring our commitment to continue our relationship with INC, and also this partnership with Eagle that has been very fruitful in the last few years. And I don't know if you have any, I guess you have some Brazilian viewers also. We have a Brazilian community in the Philippines. I just wanted to say hello to my fellow Brazilians who live here.
Okay. Well, I just want to reaffirm our commitment to have good relations with Eagle, with INC. I know that you have been trying to consolidate your presence in Brazil. The Brazilian embassy is always open and ready to assist you, whatever need you have. Thank you very much, Alma.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. And good luck on your trip. Soon, is it? And we will miss you. Thank you so much, Mr. Ambassador. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Likewise.